So here, when it comes to force the vote, Breonna Joy Gray, so now they're trying to pass this thing called the PRO Act, right? Ron, you've heard about the PRO Act, right? And she says, why is the PRO Act, whose passage is contingent on an unlikely filibuster reform, considered more grown-up, real-world, and an achievable goal than withholding the COVID bill votes for the $15 minimum wage or force the vote? So now some shit lib named Jack Califano, who, by the way, says he was the former deputy distributed organizing director. I don't know what that means for Bernie Sanders. Do you know what that even means, Ron? I don't even know what that means.
No.
And then he says, join DSA with the link in my bio. So I wonder if he's in the leadership of DSA. But what he says is, he answers Breonna and says, because one has the entirety of organized American labor behind it, and the other was an idea someone had on a podcast. That wasn't my idea, Jack. I know you don't read very much because you didn't read the DSA's own handbook, because that's where the idea came from. The idea came from the DSA handbook that said their number one priority was forcing a vote by any means necessary on the floor of the House. That's where it came from, and that's why there were so many people inside the DSA pissed off at their shit leadership over at the DSA, which it is. We covered that too. People are like, what the fuck? Why don't we even have a vote on this? Why don't you get... They didn't even have a vote on fucking whether to do it or not. Well, we didn't have the time. We don't... Oh, the mechanisms... Like a completely controlled opposition organization is what the DSA sounds like. And by the way, all the great organizing the DSA does, I got more people to a town hall than the DSA has members. How about that? So fuck you, Jack. How about that? And this is a guy turned into a shit lib right in front of your eyes, pretending politics 101 doesn't matter. And it's a bad idea because it was an idea someone had the idea. So it's not, he doesn't argue the idea. He argues the source. Again, it's an idea that came from a podcast. So it would have been better if it came from MSNBC or...
Because they've had such great ideas to help people.
Right? Or Chris Cuomo's show or out of a fucking DNC committee. That would have been better. By the way, it didn't come from a podcast. This has been the idea. This was AOC's idea. This was Pramila Jayapal's idea. This is Ilhan Omar's idea. This isn't our idea. This is the Justice Democrats' idea. Jack, this isn't our idea.
Remind me again, the idea came from what again, Jimmy? The idea come from the DSA, right? The idea comes from the DSA, and everywhere that Jack Califano is, he tells you to join the DSA. Everywhere. But he doesn't know exactly what the DSA was willing to do, wanting to do. So the idea that somebody says that's still a podcast is trying to diminish the viewpoint of a podcast.
Yes.
That's so last century.
That's so 1999, isn't it? I love what Daniel said. He said, force the vote is bad because of an idea someone had on a podcast. People universally are disgusted with establishment corporate media. You'd think people would stop shitting on podcasts, but they're not. And that he's pointing it out. Thank you, Daniel. Here's what Ilhan Omar says, Jack.
Hey, you know what? If podcasts are so awful, why do all these people who have legacy media in their pocket, why are they all starting podcasts?
Why does Chris Hayes...
Podcasts are so bad.
Why does Chris Hayes have his own podcast?
Why did Hillary Clinton try podcasting?
Oh, how'd that work out?
I haven't heard anything.
How'd that work out? How does it... Steph, look up Hillary... Look up her on YouTube, Hillary Clinton's podcast. See if it's on YouTube. Here's what Ilhan Omar says, Jack. Yes, we can. With a slim majority in the next Congress, anything can be possible. It will literally take 5 courageous progressive members to get concessions on progressive policies. That's Ilhan Omar saying that, Jack. That's not a podcast. So now you want to come up with another bullshit reason why it's not a good idea? Even if this was true, force the vote was in the DSA playbook on strategies to get Medicare for all. So what? It was a brilliant idea, and everyone who considers themselves on the left should have joined in putting the pressure on the squad to use their unique moment of leverage. Of course. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The force the vote strategy predates Jimmy Dore. It's in the DSA handbook, Jack. Nurses all over the country were for it. You retweet propaganda from the mainstream media. Please go away. So they're all talking to this guy, Jack Califano. They're all talking to him. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Force the vote strategy predates Jimmy Dore. It's in the DSA handbook. Nurses all over the country are for it. So maybe, Jack, you don't read the DSA handbook, which I know you don't. Here's another one. It begs the question, why are unions content to let 45,000 Americans die each year for the lack of health care? Why is labor so cozy with Pelosi? That's my question. You're going to wait for the shitty teachers union when, what's her name, Randy Weingarten, who's obviously corrupted? Before I can get health care, I have to ask a corrupted union leader like Randy Weingarten, who's obviously corrupt? What about the $15 minimum wage then, Jack? You have a knee-jerk negative reaction to force the vote, so address Bree's other example. Poo-pooing and did you notice that, by the way? Yes. He didn't talk about the $15 minimum wage, which was not a force the vote moment. Why not address that? Because he doesn't have an argument for it. Because it wasn't originated on a podcast, I guess, so we can't dismiss it. Poo-pooing a demand to wield power just because the idea started in a grassroots media isn't a good take. And then underneath, someone says, do you know what the PRO Act does? Serious question. Yes, it makes the Democratic Party look like it wants to help workers without actually helping workers because it's dead without filibuster reform. That's what the PRO Act is. FYI. And so what Jack was doing was an ad hominem attack against force the vote, trying to dismiss it because of the source. And as I want to remind everybody what it's an ad hominem attack, it's in everyday language. The term ad hominem argument is primarily used to refer to a fallacious personal attack against the source of an argument that is unsound from a logical perspective. And that's all pieces of shit like Jack Califano have. There you go. And so and let's go to Shant Mesrobian. He was on the popular show in the UK, and here's what he had to say about it.
On the strategic question of force the vote, I think it was a very smart campaign. However, I think the reason for the campaign wasn't actually, Medicare for All was the hook of the campaign, but the reason why the campaign, I think, started, the genesis of that campaign was simply because the squad failed to do what they were hired to do, which is to challenge the speakership, right? I mean, that's what they were expected to do. And they failed to do that over 2 successive cycles. And then Jimmy Dore then very smartly did a bit of organizing, better organizing than I've seen any actual organizer on the left do. And he's not an organizer, he's a media figure, but he was very smart and very in touch, I think, with what people actually want. And he was smart to kind of recognize, okay, they're going to do this again. They're not going to challenge Pelosi at all. They're going to vote right in line with the party establishment, the leadership. Well, what if we use Medicare for All as a wedge issue, essentially, to kind of, activate the actual base and say, hey, you need to challenge Pelosi and tell her that if you don't bring Medicare for All to a floor vote, then I won't vote for you, right? I mean, this is a very smart campaign. And what it sort of exposed, I think, is that there's a real rift, I wouldn't say within the left maybe, but between the left and people who care about things that the left cares about, right? I would say that the problem here isn't really with just the squad. It's really with the left in general, in my opinion. I don't think the left cares about an issue like Medicare for All in the same way that a lot of people at home do, right? And so what I would say is that the left, the professional left, is, this, not just the professional left, but the base of the left too, is a very upper middle class, professional class set of people. The actual apparatus of the left is an even more rarefied kind of group of people. They're media influencers, intellectuals, They are academics, NGO activists, that sort of thing. For them, the left is really more of a sort of an industry and a lifestyle brand, right? And it has this issue stack. And Medicare for All is somewhere in there, but it's not really treated as the priority that many people, clearly Jimmy Dore's audience, see it as, right? And so I think what Jimmy Dore did was sort of expose that there are a lot of people who care about the left's issues, but don't actually care about the sort of politics that the left espouses as kind of exemplified by the Squad.
Okay. Very well said. I appreciate him saying that. Here I am sweaty because I got my goddamn vaccine shot. Anything you want us to wrap up, Ron, by saying about this?
Yeah, the fight continues and it will continue. And, I encourage everybody to check out organizations like Whole Washington, to check out the organization we have here trying to bring single payer to California. Justin Jackson has been very vocal and supportive of them and those efforts, because we need to try every single avenue possible to get this thing. And when you're trying and when you're pushing, that's not pushing something backwards. It's pushing something forward.
That's right.
So there you go.
Fighting sets us back.
I'm inspired.
Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.